Here we go. Fox News alert: President Trump isn't letting up when it comes to pressure on the Islamic Republic, issuing a fresh warning to Tehran about compliance. But Iranian leadership doesn't sound all the way on board with the agreement.
Trey Yinks joins us live from Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. After Vice President J.D. Vance announced that Iran has agreed to allow international atomic energy inspectors into their country, President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning saying, in part, if they did not agree to this, there would be no further negotiations. Well, the Iranians today are going on the record saying they did not agree to this point. Take a listen.
We neither had a meeting with the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, nor do we have any plan for the agency to inspect Iran's nuclear facilities damaged as a result of the U.S. military aggression and the Zionist regime. Fundamentally, there is no procedure in this regard.
Now, President Trump spoke from the Oval Office on Monday, saying that if Iran doesn't live up to their end of the agreement, he'll do what he has to do. The focus over the next 60 days will be resolving issues surrounding Iran's nuclear program and keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. With the initial agreement in place, millions of barrels of crude oil are leaving the Persian Gulf each day.
We took in more oil yesterday than has ever gone through the Strait. You probably see that we have an oil gusher. The Strait is totally open. You know that. And we're negotiating. We'll see how that all goes. But we have two things. We have an open Strait, and we have a country that will never have a nuclear weapon. Will never, ever have a nuclear weapon.
On Monday, the U.S. Treasury authorized Iranian oil sales, temporarily waiving long-placed sanctions against the Iranian regime. The sanctions relief will be controlled by the United States, and unfrozen money Iran receives in the future would be used to purchase food and medical supplies for the Iranian people, according to President Trump. Now, there is this other broad issue of Lebanon and the exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Israelis today targeted a cell of Hezbollah gunmen in the southern part of Lebanon. They say they had intelligence that these militants were planning an attack against their forces. Guys?
Wow. So, Trey, that is pretty big. If they deny right away that there's inspections, and one of the first things J.D. Vance said is they've agreed to bring back the IAEA, and we made a call at 2 o'clock in the morning and nobody picked up. How could they be in the same meeting and have a divergent view on something as fundamental as that?
Yeah, it's a great question because it raises other questions, not just about their nuclear program and their willingness to make these serious commitments, but also about the Strait of Hormuz. The language that is being exchanged here is quite important because the Iranians will, at the negotiating table, agree to one thing and then come out publicly and say something else. And so we've got to be measured and patient here to see what actually gets agreed to and if they're going to allow these inspectors into their country. But there is this other issue of the Strait of Hormuz. And today, Iranian state media is reporting that Iran has imposed a daily limit on the number of vessels allowed to transit the Strait of Hormuz. They're trying to control this like a faucet that they can turn on and off. Now, again, if this is confirmed, it is yet another example of the Iranians saying something at the negotiating table and then announcing something else publicly.
So, Trey, that's where the rubber is going to meet the road. The president has acknowledged that he allows Iran to say their nonsense because they got to keep their population. But some of these things, they have to act upon, and these metrics have to happen within the 60 days. This is when you're going to get a response from the president when they don't actually comply with certain measures.
Absolutely. And that's what President Trump talked about over the weekend during an interview with Fox News. He talked about the Strait of Hormuz. And if the Iranians want to try and toll the strait, he said the United States will toll the strait and ultimately take up to 20% of the oil that passes through. He described this as the U.S. being the guardian angel of the Strait of Hormuz and the broader Middle East. And so the president was very clear that if the Iranians go back on some of these agreements that they've made, he leaves open the possibility of taking over the Strait of Hormuz in the future. And so these critical 60 days are going to be very important to watch. And again, we have to wait for verifiable action because oftentimes there's propaganda coming out of Tehran. But then when you look at the international shipping data, there's millions of barrels of crude oil exiting the Persian Gulf each day. And so, again, patience is needed here. And a lot of these statements that are coming from the Iranians, they're speaking not to the international community, but to their domestic audience, understanding that they do have to make concessions as it relates to the strait and their nuclear program.
Trey, two things. What do you make of the interaction with those leaders and J.D. Vance? They're hugging, shaking hands. Witkoff is hugging. Some leaders, we didn't see that. And also, what about frozen assets, frozen money that it's being reported in some publications that some of that money will be unfrozen for Iran?
Yeah, President Trump today posted on Truth Social and said that sanctions relief in the future will actually go into an escrow account that we understand, according to U.S. officials, will have oversight not just from the United States, but also from the Qataris to make sure that at least some of this money, according to the president and the vice president, goes to buying U.S. farm goods and medical supplies for the Iranian people. Again, we've not yet heard from the Iranians about this point, and it's very important here to compare statements and actions about what will actually take place. What we saw in those images from the vice president, I think, highlights, at least on the negotiation side, the mediators have a very strong relationship with the Trump administration. Whether it is Pakistan or Qatar, they have worked both in front of the cameras and behind the scenes to try and move this deal forward. But the president over the weekend described this as a 60-day option for him. And he maintains both military action and diplomacy after that window if the Iranians comply or if they go back on some of these promises that they've made.
Right. The closer he gets to the midterms, I think the less likely the president to act. But after the midterms, the gloves come off. Thanks so much, Trey. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trey.